Well, good morning. Glad that you're here. This is it's October. It's really October. Everybody excited for the fall decorations and get all your pumpkins out and have a fun time with all the fall colors that we never see in Texas. In Vermont, I saw a lot of fall colors. But glad you're here. I think there may be one or two people live streaming. We have a special guest today. You all know that we had signified the mayor, and he's here, and we will get started. Just a few announcements. The sign-ups for the rest of the month are on the table out there. We'll have someone from the Glenn Biggs Institute next week. And then on October 20th, we will be doing lunch and a river cruise for our October birthday lunch. And there's a sign up out there. And then on October 27th, Emily Balcom will be here. And she formerly was a news person with KSAC, Channel 4. And now she works with she's the public relations manager for the Alamo, and she'll be with us on the 27th. So be sure that you sign up on the table, on the sheets on the table out there. And any other announcements that I need to make? Stanley, you said you had something? Can I trust you to take the microphone?
I just wanted to, Mary and I used to be with a dance group called Urban 15, and on December 19th, they're going to put on a laser show at the Lila Cockrell Theater. Now, what they use is I think, like a frozen carbon dioxide to have a fog, and they have laser figurines on this giant screen, and it's all laser, and it's for Christmas music. It's all your favorite Christmas music, and you just watch it. It lasts, how long, Mary? It lasts about 45 minutes, but it is fantastic, and you've never seen anything like that before. Mary and I go every year because it gets us in the Christmas spirit, and it is free. But you have to go online and get tickets. If y'all are interested, then next month I'll bring some flyers. I'll make up some flyers so y'all know what website. If you want to go, it's urban15.org. But it's free, and it is fantastic. It really is. And so depending on the number of people that want to go, we'll try to figure out how to get you there. Okay? And thank y'all.
Okay, can you believe that we're talking about Christmas already? We haven't had Thanksgiving. So I've asked our own ambassador, Sachan Siv, I know he was here, there he is, if he would introduce our special guest today, and we'll go forward in our time.
Thank you, Joe. In case you did not know, Joe was really a masterful planner, because Nancy and I went to Alaska with him in July, and can you believe it? I mean, you all were going through a triple-digit weather. We were freezing, 50 degrees in the day and 40 degrees at night. This is a small village called Chivak, which is about 500 miles west of Anchorage. This is almost at the end of the world. And I say this with a lot of respect. You know, I've been to a lot of countries around the world, but Chivak was quite amazing. But thank you, Joe. When Martha and I decided to move from the East Coast, from New York and Washington, D.C. in 2006, we looked at various cities around the state of Texas, and we chose San Antonio for a number of reasons. And you know why we chose San Antonio. But the thought never crossed my mind that one day I would have the honor to introduce the mayor of San Antonio. And you all know our mayor, he has done an excellent job, and I want to congratulate you, especially for the non-stop flight from here to Frankfurt, which congratulations. I'm one of the people who use a lot of traveling from San Antonio International, Kevin, I read the news, I said, this is it. And I hope we have more flights to other parts of the world, especially to Asia. That would be a master coup. But let us give the mayor, our mayor, Ron Nirenberg, a very big welcome to this church. Welcome.
Thank you, Ambassador. So I never thought I'd have the honor of being introduced by an ambassador, so especially one who's become a friend over the years. So thank you very much, Ambassador, for the introduction. It's great to be back with you again. I will forgive you for stealing some of my thunder, because that is good news I want to get to in just a minute, the airport progress, but it is a pleasure to join you once again. I think it's been a few years now since we've been together. And with your indulgence, I'll offer some updates about where we are here at the city, and then we can just get into a conversation as you'd like. As you know, we're now in October, thank goodness. We've got our first cold front coming through, which is great relief from a very difficult summer. But with October means October 1 is our beginning of the fiscal year 2024. So we just passed our FY24 budget. And I would characterize this year's budget discussions and, the overall, city budget as one that focuses on public safety and what it means to be a safe community. So more than just, as you would think, emergency services. Better sidewalks and streets, a sturdy roof over each of our heads, job security, more sustainable environment, financial security, decreasing emergency response times, better response to animal care calls. All of those things go into what it means to be a safe and healthy community and what it means to feel safe in our homes. In this year's budget, we cut the property tax rate for the second year in a row, and we also maxed out our homestead exemption to 20%, which is the maximum amount allowed by state law to help us, again, manage the portion of the bills that is under the city's control. Again, I always have to remind folks, the city is probably what you experience most when you go out into the world. When you leave your home, you run into city services, you run into city infrastructure. The city portion of your property tax bill, though, is only 1/5. It's 20% roughly of what you pay in property taxes. There are multiple other jurisdictions that are taxing in this community. You have the Alamo College District, you have the University Health System, Bexar County, and the San Antonio River Authority, and then you have the city as well. In this year's budget, we committed to getting an additional 400 individuals experiencing homelessness off the street, and we will also prevent another 300 residents from falling into homelessness through various diversion programs. We will spend another $36 million from our affordable housing bond, which is actually not part of the general fund budget, but was approved by voters in 2022 on improving rehabilitation and ramping up production of affordable housing stock. Recognizing the community's needs and certainly the very challenging traumas that we've experienced over the last few months, we're going to be increasing our animal care services budget by 26%, and our response times to dangerous animal calls will fall steeply over the next few years. We're adding 105 new police officers, 32 new fire positions, a new EMS unit, and all those things will go into lowering response times and making sure that we have the appropriate amount of resources in the various elements and areas that we need to have those emergency responders. I should also add that in our policing strategy, over the years we have been 40% proactive policing, 60% response, reactive policing, meaning that as patrol officers are out in the streets, 60% of the time they're responding to calls. 40% of the time they're just moving through the community, making sure that we have good visibility, et cetera. Working with UTSA and doing some data analysis, we want to flip that model. So over the next 3 years or so, we're going to be adding over 300, and I believe the number is about 300 patrol officer positions, so significantly augmenting our patrol divisions so that we can do more visibility, more proactive policing so that we can also reduce the amount of stress on the police officers themselves when they're out and about in the community. And we look forward to extended and expanding support for our SA core teams as we elevate our approach to responding to mental health crises. Another important development in policing is that we now have interdisciplinary units who are trained and specialize in mental health response. Trained clinicians, et cetera, who can respond to mental health calls, which are significantly increasing over the last several years as we experience a mental health crisis, not just in San Antonio, but across the country. Additionally, this year's budget will add 72 more miles of usable sidewalk, a more frequent lane striping program, which I'll touch on in just a second, nearly 1,500 street projects, and 15,000 new materials for our public libraries. Believe it or not, when I walked into the mayor's office, our city streets, which we have almost 5,000 miles of city streets, and this doesn't include the interstates, which are controlled by the state, and then county roads that are controlled by the county. But on our city streets, we had a restriping schedule, you know, the dotted lines, et cetera, of roughly once every 20 years. So every 20 years, that street would be restriped. Simply put, that's pretty ridiculous. So we significantly increased that budget and service time, and we got it down to once every 5 years. We're now moving to about once every 3 years. So as you can see, we're stepping into modern times with simple things, but an important thing that improves traffic safety, and that is striping of the lanes. The budget proved we can deliver on new programs and initiatives while honoring the will and the trust of the public. Since I walked in the mayor's office, another important thing changed, and we've talked about this before, recognizing that, you know, just as you would budget for your household, you apply the resources that you have to the needs that are present. You know, some areas of your household need a little bit extra attention and therefore need a little extra resources. You don't just arbitrarily cut everything up into equal slices and apply it to everything. Well, unfortunately, the way politics works is that, generally speaking, political jurisdictions all get an equal share. For instance, District 1 gets 1/10 of the pie, District 2, 1/10, et cetera, et cetera. That's just not going to work. On simple things like infrastructure, and I'll give you an example. On the east side of town, where we build streets on clay soils in an area of town that is prone to flooding, if you build a section of street, a mile of street today, in about 5 years, that street is going to need almost a full reconstruction. Build the same street on another part of town that's on limestone, in 30 years, you're probably just going to need a little bit of retouching. So you can understand that if we are to expect quality streets in all parts of town, some areas, because of the conditions, are going to require a little bit more extra, or a little bit extra just for maintenance. And that's just if we start at the same place, all of us, today, which simply is not the case, and I think we can all agree with that. So we started budgeting with an equity framework, meaning that we apply the resources that we have to where they're needed the most. And we've been doing that now successfully over the last 7 years. And that is an opportunity for us to ensure that every part of town has quality infrastructure and services. This is the 7th equity budget in a row, and again, focusing on the highest needs of our entire city. And we'll continue to work to ensure residents' voices and input are genuinely heard, included, and reflected in our decision-making process. This is a measure of transparency, and frankly, it's a measure of fiscal responsibility. San Antonio's economy, now elevating beyond the budget, has recovered quickly from the pandemic. I know we still have lingering impacts, but our economy has shown remarkable resilience for a number of reasons. But let me just kind of go into how we're doing economically. San Antonio's gross domestic product, which is probably the most blunt way of measuring economic output, San Antonio's GDP has increased 46% from 2017 to 2023. Median wage has risen in each of those 6 years, which is an outlier compared to other major cities across the country where we've seen significant downturns as a result of the pandemic. San Antonio has steadily increased its wage earning. Looking back on the last 6 years, I am very proud of that. I'm proud of the momentum and the community rallying together to make that possible. And I think we have emerged from the pandemic as a city hard at work, building a bright future for everybody. Some of our biggest employers, Toyota, Boeing, Standard Aero, which are all part of the advanced manufacturing space, have announced significant new workloads and investments over the last couple of years. And the high-paying jobs that are being offered in these sectors represent the kind of future we're trying to create for all of San Antonio. That which is creating good jobs that pay well, that sustain families. Jobs in advanced manufacturing, jobs in cybersecurity and IT, financial services, construction and trades, healthcare and biosciences. These are the sectors that are leading employment in our community, and we are leaning into ensuring that we have an adequate workforce to continue to build those jobs. The UTSA School of Data Science and the National Security Collaboration Center are up and running. They're bringing exciting new activity downtown. There's going to be a sister building that's going to be built right next to the School of Data Science over the next couple of years, very soon. And UTSA's progress is a boon to our cybersecurity and tech industries. Already, you may know that San Antonio has the second highest concentration of cybersecurity assets anywhere outside of Washington, D.C. And that is because of our DoD, that's because of private entities, private sector entities within the cybersecurity industry, and it's also because of academic institutions like UTSA. So stay tuned, there's going to be some additional economic development news in the not too distant future. So let's go back to the airport now. Many of you heard about the Frankfurt flight. It starts as seasonal. It's Condor Airlines, which is a European-based airline, but a full-service airline, and one of the better ones if you ask folks that fly in Europe. Condor Airlines will now be going nonstop every day between San Antonio and Frankfurt into the heart of Europe. So if you fly into Frankfurt, if anybody has flown into Europe, it's in the heart of Europe, which is basically one nonstop away from anywhere you would want to go to, essentially in the world, but certainly within Europe. So imagine this, it's now as convenient to go to Rome, Athens, Paris, you name it, as it is to go to Washington, D.C. from our city. It's a full-service airline. The airfares are going to be highly competitive. In fact, if you fly first class, the fares retail for first class are going to be under $3,000, which is really unheard of. As I mentioned, it's going to be going back and forth every day. So it's going to be here one day, Frankfurt the next day, here one day, Frankfurt the next day, ongoing. And it's seasonal to start from May to September, starting in May 2024. But that's essentially how those airlines begin. The first flight's already been sold out. We expect it to do very well, and we expect it to bring new flights as the ambassador has asked that we do. So I'm very excited about it. Just as an interesting aside, all of you know how expansive Austin's air service has been over the last couple of decades. Condor was the first airline to launch transatlantic air service from Bergstrom. This is a company that knows what they're doing. They invest in growth markets, and frankly, we're going to be seeing them at the ground floor of one of their massive expansions as well. They're going to be putting new aircraft into San Antonio, and they're massively expanding their fleet internationally. So this is going to be a great marriage, we believe. So all of this, and by the way, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but we also just announced another nonstop destination to Mexico, Querétaro, which is another major economic hub that we partner with, and so that's another big win for San Antonio. We maintain our status as the gateway into Mexico in terms of air connectivity. And this is all before we actually put shovels in the ground for our new terminal. That's happening next year. We are designing and soon will be building the modern airport facility that this city needs and deserves. Construction is scheduled to begin next year, and the anticipated opening date of the new terminal is spring 2028. And the pedal is to the metal. In fact, I talked to the airport director quite frequently. He and I were in Mexico trying to lock up those flights last week, and you know, he was very encouraging when it comes to making sure that we're on time and moving quickly on this project. As you may know, in March, airport staff unveiled the design work for what is now a $2.5 billion airport facility project. And I would say we've come a long way in just a few years. In 2017, I put together the Air Service Development Committee, which is business leaders, aviation leaders, as well as military leaders, no politicians. And I wanted them to answer the question, where should San Antonio's airport of the future be? Because as you know, we've all been debating this. You know, we should build an airport on the south side of town or between here and Austin, yada, yada, yada. We've heard it all. What I've always thought is that if it were possible for us to have a world-class airport that meets our needs and that is able to grow where it currently is, it would be a strategic competitive advantage as a city. Because name a major city that you fly into where you're basically, when you fly in, you're about 10 to 15 minutes away from anywhere you would want to go in that city. There's not many. In fact, the only one that I can think of is Washington, D.C., and it's taking an act of Congress for us to get connectivity over there, literally. So it would be a great advantage. So the Air Service Development Committee, led by John Dixon, finally answered that question with data, and they said, yes, we can build it there, and so that's what we're doing. Now the design work and financing is underway for a massive new terminal, Terminal Alpha, which I'm calling it for now, will be bigger than both of the current terminals combined. The hallways will be much larger. The hold areas as you're waiting for the flights will be much larger, so you know, traffic won't be spilling into the hallways. We can also accommodate wide-body jets. So this is going to be a major world-class air service facility, something that a major city needs. I believe it's a transformational move forward for San Antonio, demonstrating not only to the world, but to ourselves where San Antonio is headed. And I do believe that it befits a world-class city, one of America's largest cities, in fact, world-class, international, and finally, as we know, intercontinental. And also, I should note, a lot of you look nervous when I said $2.5 billion. San Antonio taxpayers are not paying for this project. These air service facilities are built by FAA grants, which are distributed all over the country based on air service needs, because again, the airspace is federal authority. So it's built by FAA grants and airline fees, and we're in active negotiations with both, and we've already seen some great success with the FAA in partnership with the administrator. We've already received nearly $100 million in grants over the past 4 years, and we expect that work to continue. The airport director, the city manager, and myself are up in DC quite a bit, meeting with the FAA to ensure that those funds continue to flow to keep this project on track. Now, we've gone to the air, let's go to the ground. We need massive transformation there. And in another significant transportation development, I'm happy to say, after long discussions and us talking about it in concept for years and years and years, we're finally building mass transit in San Antonio. VIA has continued to move forward with a north-south advanced rapid transit line. We call it the Green Line. And we're also in planning phase for the east-west rapid transit line. These have received almost, actually over $300 million in federal allocations through the president's budget. And so we are looking forward to breaking ground on those projects beginning in next year. So let me go now to housing. 6 years ago, I announced the creation of the Mayor's Housing Policy Task Force, recognizing the fact that housing was becoming a crisis all across the country. This is doubly so now because of the pandemic, but we saw the housing crisis coming well before the pandemic. And this city, in all of our time together, we have never had a comprehensive housing policy, one that considered the importance of rehabilitation and preservation of existing housing stock in a 300-year-old city, but also the importance of us facilitating, with all of the agencies involved, production of housing to meet, to ensure that there's an adequate balance of supply and demand. The city government does not create the market, but it certainly facilitates the environment. And so what I did is put together a task force of several different parties that could represent all the different perspectives on what we need to be, what each of these different agencies and organizations and rulemaking entities need to do to get aligned on the goal, and then begin to create policy and initiatives to support that goal. And again, our goal was to ensure that everyone in the city of San Antonio, regardless of their circumstance, has a place to call home that is safe and affordable. And for some folks, it looks like an apartment building. Other folks, it's a home. Some folks, need some assistance for rehabilitation of an older home because they're on a fixed income. And again, how do we make sure that the San Antonio Housing Authority, that the City of San Antonio, Bexar County Housing Authority, that all the different agencies and public and private sector entities that are working in the housing space are aligned, and we're working together as opposed to cross purposes. So as a result of that work, they created a housing policy framework, and finally a business plan along with it. And we have adopted those and ratified those, and it has led to things like our first ever affordable housing bond, which was approved by voters in 2022. It was part of the $1.2 billion bond package on the May 2022 ballot that was approved by voters, and in it was the first ever $150 million housing bond for affordability. More than 24 projects are in the pipeline through the 2 phases already approved by City Council, and it includes things like the Town Twin Village project, which I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but essentially it's a tiny home project that we're working in partnership with private entities that are creating homes to get people off the street, that have nonprofits working with rehabilitative services. So we actually have places where people to go who are experiencing homelessness. Rather than just eradicating encampments, we have places for people to get into housing and be assisted and get back on their feet. So there's a lot of different projects like that include rehabilitation, production of homes in this community. And then of course, as we have adequate supply of affordable housing, the market is healthier and creates the kind of housing that the market creates on its own, which is market rate and luxury housing. We need it all. We need supply to meet the demand in all aspects of housing, from affordable to luxury, all of it. Now, meanwhile, of the 100 cities that joined the Biden administration's House America efforts to reduce homelessness across the nation, I'm happy to say that San Antonio was the very first to meet its goal of rehousing 1,500 residents between November 2021 and December 2022. We were the very first city in the country to do that. In fact, we were able to exceed our goal by rehousing 1,880 people by the end of 2022. These are folks that were on the street who are now in homes, in shelter. Our work to move people off the street will continue and further be accelerated by the $25 million included in the housing bond to help people exit homelessness for good. These efforts represent significant strides toward boosting housing affordability through proven programs and methods and partnerships that ultimately enhance the quality of life for every resident in San Antonio. Simply said, we are not playing politics with the homelessness and housing issue. We're simply creating solutions to problems. Now, I talked about housing, and I talked about transportation, 2 of the 3 legs of the stool that create economic mobility. The other important leg of the stool is education and workforce development, training. I'm happy to say that in 2020, in the height of the pandemic, November, voters approved a reallocation of an existing sales tax to go towards job training, to help folks exit unemployment and underemployment. And the workforce development program, I'm happy to report, is gaining significant momentum. More than 8,000 applicants have been interviewed for the Ready to Work program at this point, which was crafted with extensive business community input. And over 4,000 residents are enrolled in the Workforce Development Program, training for jobs such as cybersecurity and IT, again, construction and trades, healthcare and biosciences, advanced manufacturing, et cetera. And the program is not just to help folks get jobs, but it's also to fill the jobs that are currently vacant in our community. By filling jobs, we can also grow more jobs. And so it's helping businesses find trained workers, at the same time helping San Antonians find career opportunities they deserve to raise their families and live the American dream here at home. As the pandemic highlighted, too many of our neighbors are one challenge away from financial disruption, one event away from economic catastrophe. Back in 1968, San Antonio was the subject of a documentary called Hunger in America. We were the face of urban poverty. And you can go see it. It was aired on 60 Minutes. There was a story about it on 60 Minutes. If you flash forward to 2020, our city was also now the iconic image of the pandemic. The sea of cars, the unending cars lined up to get assistance from the food bank. That many thousands of San Antonio families, and frankly representing millions of American families who now needed to go to the food bank because of one health event, the pandemic, that disrupted their economic condition. So what that showed us is that we have a broken economic foundation if so many of our families are simply one event away from that kind of catastrophe. And we have to ensure that folks no longer are requiring that assistance by ensuring that they have stable careers and they have wages that can sustain a family. The truth is that pandemic image was our city even before the pandemic, because so many thousands of our community members had to work the 2 or 3 extra jobs just to put food on the table. So raising the wages of this community through job training and education has been a primary effort in our office. And I would say that the results of this program early on are encouraging. It's not been an easy task. This has not been done at this scale. It's the largest local workforce investment in our nation's history. But already through an economic impact analysis that was just released, we've seen in the first year of this program, we've had a $1.7 billion economic impact to the community. There has been a 61 to $1 return on investment. For every $1 that's been invested in this community through the Ready to Work program, there has been a $61 return on investment. The average wage increase for the Ready to Work participant who is now out of the training and into a new job has been over $15 an hour. So you can see that if our goal is to break cycles of poverty and make folks, or allow folks to be able to sustain their families and be less dependent on social assistance, then you can see if we break the cycle for one family, how that has an impact on their children and grandchildren. Statistically, if a child is raised in poverty, they are more likely to raise their own children in poverty, and it continues the cycle. So if we can break the cycle for one generation, it has an impact generation after generation, and that's what we're doing now with thousands of families in San Antonio. And as those lives change, we will have realized not only a stronger, more resilient and permanent workforce ecosystem, but a better quality of life for everybody in this community. And I would say that coupled with the Ready to Work momentum, Pre-K for SA and Alamo Promise continue to provide important educational opportunities for early childhood and post-secondary students, bolstering our support for the workforce pipeline. Lastly, small business has been severely impacted by economic disruption over the last few years. And I'm happy to say that Council also approved allocating over $30 million in federal ARPA funds to San Antonio small businesses, helping provide relief for the engine of our economy and adjust to the post-pandemic reality. So I will say that going forward, providing support for both of our employers and our workers will remain priorities for generations to come. In closing, and then we'll get into a conversation, I know I've rambled on for a long time. I am very proud of the momentum that San Antonio has created and has now maintained during the course of the pandemic. I've learned a few things. The first one is, well, something I already knew, which is I love this city, but there is no city in the country where people in a community rally around each other like San Antonio. Every one of these programs that I've mentioned to you, while it took a little bit of effort to put forward, has been supported by massive proportions by the San Antonio community. Most of these projects have been public votes, and so when I go around other places and I talk about San Antonio, I've talked about the fact that San Antonio is putting their money where their mouths are. This is a community that invests in itself, that sees challenges and meets them head on, and it makes me very proud to be in this community as a resident, let alone as your mayor. I am in my final term. It's great to be with you. Time has flown by. I would say that I'm looking forward to the next couple of years. I have a great sense of urgency to get as much done as possible. And it's all characterized, I think, by one thing, which is that we are moving in the right direction, and we've got great momentum. And I want to make sure that whoever comes in after me recognizes that momentum has been created by the San Antonio public and keeps us moving in the right direction. So it's great to be with you, and with that, I guess I'll take questions if that's all right. Yeah. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question because they came in to visit with us a couple times, and I listened, because we need transportation options. In my view, we need to take an all-of-the-above transportation position on transportation. I will tell you, though, we have massive needs in the transportation arena, and if we're going to put public dollars towards a project, it would be, in my view, way down on the list would be to have an underground toll road. We've got a lot of other needs. So, I want to finish the ART project. If there are public dollars standing around in the RMA, we need that for the advanced rapid transit, for the mass transit plans, because once we get the backbone east, west, north, south, we want to extend that in other parts of town. So, in my view, if there's going to be an underground toll road for Teslas, it's not going to come on the public's dime. Yeah, well, we have tried that. We've tried commuter plans, and frankly, they've been a little bit haphazard. Let me get back to you on that. What I will say is that our traffic gridlock has only just begun. We haven't really seen the pain yet that other cities have had. We're trying to avoid it by creating alternatives. But not until we see, and hopefully we won't get there, but not until we see the kind of traffic snarls that characterize other major cities, particularly coastal cities, do private sector entities have the impetus to respond to government's call, like flex times or alternative start and end times. So we really haven't seen much momentum in unified action on that front. Yeah.
And I noticed that there's some roads that didn't have stripes. I said, so this is where the stripe would be. So this is actually 2 lanes. But I've been noticing that there are more stripes being put down the road.
I'm going to thank Betty Sutherland, a great friend of mine and a longtime advisor, for initially putting that on my radar.
Right. So yeah, again, one of those things. Until somebody does it, you don't recognize it. I want to say a couple things. One is you've been accessible and adaptable and certainly accountable. So I appreciate that. You've been very open as mayor, and there's so many groups of people that you have benefited. So thank you very much for that. You touched very briefly about Alamo Promise.
Yeah.
And I was so excited about that because at my marketing firm, I've hired 100 people in 25 years from Alamo colleges. And I noticed that the ones that worked with me made 2 to 2.5 times what their parents were making, all from having an associate's degree. And that is generational. Now some of my employees from 20 years ago are married and having kids, and their kids have a better education. So can you talk a little bit about what Alamo Promise is?
Happy to. And that was our moonshot, and it happened right before the pandemic. And Chancellor Flores and I have been talking about it for years. He's been a dear friend, family friend for years. But when he became chancellor, we launched the Alamo Promise Project. And what that is essentially, at this point, and we've grown it in 3 phases, any graduate of a high school in Bexar County now has the opportunity to attend any of the Alamo colleges for free, tuition free. Not only that, and mind you, the Alamo Colleges District has been recognized as the best community college district in the country. Rivals the kind of education you can get from most 4-year institutions. But it's not just about tuition. So think about this, and this is applicable for the Ready to Work program as well. Oftentimes, most often, when someone doesn't complete an education, it's not because of a tuition payment. It's because life got in the way. There was a child care issue, there was a health event, transportation, missed rent, etc. So the Alamo Promise program, yes, it is about tuition remission, but it's also about a constellation of nonprofit organizations that we have brought together to assist the student and help navigate that student through their educational career to anticipate and overcome those obstacles. So, for instance, if there was a health event that required care, and that person didn't have adequate access to medical care, we would facilitate that. If there was a rent issue, we would get access through partnership with a financial institution to help them deal with that. Doing everything we can to remove the barriers that would ultimately be that roadblock that makes them drop out of school. We remove that so they can stay in school, complete their certification, and eventually be a wage earner with an economically mobile education. So that is the Alamo Promise program. It's a partnership between the city and Alamo Colleges District, and is now available to every single high school graduate in Bexar County.
Just for the benefit of everyone, Howie Nestel, who just spoke, the mayor and I, we belong to the same club. We exercise at the Jewish Community Center, and each time I see you lifting weight, I said, no wonder he's the mayor of San Antonio. Because you need a lot of strength, physical strength to tackle all these problems. I want to second you on the point about the convenience of the airport. When Martha and I moved here from New York and Washington in 2006, the breaking point for us to choose San Antonio was the airport. In addition to the history, the food, the medical facility, the Alamo and everything, the airport was really the point that made us decide San Antonio, because it's so easy to get in and out. Like you said, when you get to the airport, you're in area in San Antonio in 10 and 15 minutes. And we used to tell friends that when you land, call us, we'll get there before you get your luggage.
So I shouldn't tell you this, but I live 7.5 minutes away from the airport, so it's not a good habit, but I leave for the airport as soon as I get the ding that they're boarding. That's if I don't have any luggage.
But you have police escort, right?
What's that?
Do you have police escort?
Yeah, I don't have to park.
Oh, you don't have to park. Okay, that's a good one. Okay. Going back to the airport, as one who travels quite a bit, I always put San Antonio in my talking points. And as we move away from the big cities, from the Londons, the Paris, the Romes, the Tokyos of the world, it pains me that people know little about San Antonio. They heard about Houston, they heard about Dallas because of the show, and so on and so forth. So the excellent presentation you just made, a lot of statistics there, and I'd love to have a copy of that if it's available, because those are very useful for me to speak about San Antonio.
Absolutely.
And also, as I continue to travel, I would be honored, to continue to speak about San Antonio, about our excellent mayor, and unfortunately he's going to leave us in a few years, but anyway, congratulations again on the very, very good job.
Thank
Well
you,
done.
Ambassador.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Uh-oh. So Agatha asked what my future holds. I don't know. If you asked me what my future holds 20 years ago, I would say I hope it's to be the beat writer for the Boston Red Sox. There's no joke. But I have learned a few things in this job. I was not expecting to be in politics. I do love it because I'm a workaholic and I thrive on stress and I love this community. So if there's an opportunity for me to stay in the politics arena, I certainly would welcome it. I don't know what that is yet, though. But I'll be working very hard as mayor of San Antonio for the next couple of years.
I have been blessed to be a beneficiary of some of those homeless organizations here that you mentioned and were partnering with. I was in SAM Ministries as a single mother with my children for some time, and then at Haven for Hope also. When I went through a brutal divorce after an abusive relationship and stuff, and then became a single mom with my 4 young children. So when you were talking about housing and moving forward, that is something that's near and dear to my heart for obvious reasons. As I mentioned, having been homeless for almost 10 years during that time, and living from couch to couch, and Salvation Army, Sam's ministry, and Haven for Hope, before finally landing on my feet and getting out of that homelessness cycle. And I appreciate that you have started to focus on that more and making more housing available. The tiny homes, because yes, living in communities and centers that house families is good on a temporary basis, but it is not a solution for the long run. And families really want that independence where they can have their children in a safe environment. So those tiny home villages are wonderful. And having come from a veteran family, I know there's a lot of homeless veterans, which is the shame of America, because no person who served this country in that ultimate way should be homeless or should be left out. And I know there's the mental issues as well as, other psychological and social issues, but I applaud you for your efforts and your focus on that, and I hope that you would continue down the right road for that. To have little children running around in the streets and not having a place to call home is a shame on America. And as a church and people who are supposed to be caring for one another, we really need to step up, I think, and do our part in that too. I love the fact, and one of the reasons I became a member of FPC over 10 years ago was because of this diversity in our missions programs and how many missions not only do we participate in, but that we actually initiated and started. I remember when we were celebrating, our 175 years, that they mentioned something like over 75 programs that FPC was a part of or founder of. And I'm proud of that history and tradition that we have as a group. And I love the fact that we can partner with a wonderful person as yourself, as our leader, as our mayor, and continue down that road. because like I said, it's a personal issue for me. So thank you, and God bless you for your good work.
Thank you very much for that and the partnership.
I want to follow up on a couple of things, earlier discussions. So I guess I have two questions. One actually ties into your just sharing about our mission. So I'm new, actually, with the federal government, recently retired, but we're transplant from DC, Maryland area. Immensely impressed with the infrastructure, the building, all that you talked about in the city. We've seen it so firsthand a lot that San Antonio is doing really well. So I commend you and the part that you've played in that, and FPC. We've been so impressed. So one of my questions, I went to a luncheon, the missions luncheon. I think you were there, speaking about Sam, but we are involved in so many of these ministries, mission in the city. And what I loved about that luncheon is our pastors really emphasized not having the scarcity mentality and how to work together. So one of my questions to you is, what are your suggestions with all these great nonprofits of how we work, how we, with our influence at FPC, how we help, with across all these ministries so that they're not working just in isolation, but working together to really, for that strength. So maybe a pause, and then I have a follow-on question if that's okay.
No, it's a great question, and really appreciate the comment about the scarcity mentality, because an interesting factoid, I guess, out of studies on philanthropy are those who have the least means often give the most. And it's really interesting because San Antonio has such a strong community of nonprofits, and we're also one of the poorer cities in America. So maybe there's something to that from a community's perspective. And why I mention that is that there are such strong nonprofit organizations and supporters and volunteers as part of those organizations. Number one thing that we have to do to make sure that we're most effective is alignment. So I mentioned the housing efforts. That started with getting everybody to the table so that everyone who's got all these great intentions is all working towards the same goals and the same objectives. Pretty much in every area of social service, we have a collaborative formed. Today, we were just at Public Safety Headquarters forming a new collaborative between faith community and our public safety community. So there's a network for violence prevention purposes. But in the area of housing, what I would say it would be most effective to stay aligned is to work with the San Antonio or South Alamo Regional Alliance for Homelessness. That is an umbrella organization that works with nonprofits, and I'm sure you're maybe already familiar with it. It's the executive director's name is Katie Vela, but that's an umbrella organization that works with dozens of nonprofits, all in the space of homelessness and housing services, and it's for the purposes of making sure that everybody's coordinated on their efforts.
Thank you. So my other question that was kind of from the previous discussion is I've been volunteering with Young Life East. So I love your example of the East Side because I see just the disparity in living conditions. And so I've worked a lot on the or been helping some with the students on the St. Philip's campus. And I just recently found out about the Ready to Work program. It sounds amazing. So can you speak? I know you spoke some with the Alamo Promise, but I'm meeting a lot of young adults, some high school, but also just college or that 18 to 22-year-old who are first generation, really kind of fighting actually against some of being pulled down from their families and trying to just make it on their own. So they're in that kind of example of trying to go to school, work 3 jobs, just trying to survive, get an apartment, get independent from, some of the, the trauma and the things that they have had in their families. So just kind of specifically how you see that Ready to Work or these programs kind of supporting them so we can help plug them into these great efforts.
Yeah, well, basically we want to create an access point to a good wage job, a career mobile job for everybody in our community. And that's one way or another, whether that's through the Alamo Promise program or it's Ready to Work or something else. But the Ready to Work program is pretty all-encompassing. And so we, all you have to do is call 311, and we have career navigators that will do an initial assessment, find out whatever remedial skills you might need, do an aptitude assessment, and actually talk about what your career interests are, and then match you up with an employer and a training track. And then that person will stay with you through your entire training program up to a year into your employment to make sure that you're addressing all those barriers that might come into place, getting acclimated to the new career, et cetera. I would say that the average participant in the Ready to Work program is perfectly aligned with where the needs are, showing that it's an equity-focused program. The average participant is a woman of color raising children in a household making less than poverty wages. And when they get out of the program, they're tripling their income. And so now much more likely to be able to be with their children. Their children are more likely to have better outcomes. And so the cycle goes in a more virtuous direction. So we are oversampling in District 2, in District 5, and in the other areas of town where you would expect. So this program with, we're taking it to the street. We're trying to make sure that people are aware of this program. We're going to churches to make sure that they have access to the information. They bring people in, but we're going where people are and where this program is needed. Yeah, so the goal is to make sure that they're matched with a career and a job when they walk in the door before they start their program. We just recently had a roundtable with the healthcare providers, and they know what jobs they're trying to fill. We have hired dozens of nurse practitioners, for instance, hundreds of commercial drivers, all of these making good wages and have career mobility. So we know the jobs that are needed, and in most cases, we're trying to match the participant before they even start the training with the job, so they know they're not training just for a certificate, they're training for a wage.
Well, thank you so much. I know that you only have a certain amount of time today, and
I'm going to get in trouble if I don't answer the last one, right? Okay. Oh, yeah, thanks. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about the fact there was Guns N' Roses in church, though.
our resident rock music fan who played in a rock band at one time. Just thank you. My responsibility is to have speakers every Friday, and I just thank you that your office is open to doing this, and everyone that I talked with was very helpful, and a token of our appreciation for you being here today.
Thank you very much.
I think last time you were here, we gave you our 150th anniversary book.
Yes.
And so this is something that, and I'll be looking for it in your press conferences and in the news to be able to say, he's wearing that. That's just...
I'll do my best.
Yeah, and no pressure, just joking.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Great to be with you.
Unfortunately, he won't be able to stay for lunch with us, and we do have lunch ready. If you did not sign up for lunch, we don't have lunch for you. And we're happy that you're here and able to participate in today. Thank you for being here. Let me pray, and we'll move to the tables and we'll enjoy our lunch together. Father, thank you for our mayor. Thank you for the work that he is doing. Thank you that we are partnering with our city as a church as well. And just pray that you would continue to guide and direct and point us in the areas that we can be effective in reaching out to this city in so many different areas. But we're excited about what's happening in our involvement with our homeless and our neighbors. So thank you for what you're doing. Pray that you be with us today in fellowship around these tables. Pray that you'd bless those that have prepared the meal and those that will be serving it to us, and give us great fellowship together as we share in this lunch. Thank you for who you are. and what you do in our lives every day. In Jesus' name, amen.